I think it's clearly focused accountability. Clearly the board of directors and their role, the role of the audit committee, the validation of their independence, the revalidation of the need for an independent outside auditor, and the direct relationship of the audit committee as a group of independent shareholders representing the shareholders and the independent auditors in that relationship has clearly created a strengthening of the shareholders' position at the table as operating management tends to want to run the business.
Well, clearly it's affected all the businesses, and some change has had to take place. Sam DiPiazza, the CEO of PricewaterhouseCoopers in a recent interview with World Energy, has said, the discussion these days is focused on accountability. But I say go past accountability, go to transparency. Put yourself in the shoe of the investor. Understand what the investor should have and tell them. Good news and bad. What are your comments?
I believe that we do need transparency. I think it's essential. Transparency, though, has a lot of different meanings. And among other things, it's transparency within the company itself. It's different employees knowing the same thing. All of those things don't go external. But if there's something bad developed internally, and there's transparency internally, then it gets to be corrected. So I believe very much that we need transparency.
Alan, have you got some thoughts on this? What are your views?
I agree with that. I think it's a matter of degree. I think you clearly have to be transparent. There becomes a point, though, where if you become too transparent, and I realize this can be argumentative, that you actually are disadvantaging your investor. There are such things as competitive advantage, knowledge in which you have your cost basis, for example, what may be a competitive financial strategy.
Every business needs profit to continue operation. But have we learned a lesson about putting profits above fair play?
Well, everyone needs to breathe, but we don't, in order to live. But we don't live just to breathe. Profits are not everything. And if you're going to have an organization, a corporation, it can't be just for making money. An organization is to provide some benefit to human beings. And so I think the purpose has to be a great deal more than just making money.
Carlos, what are your thoughts?
Well, I agree in general, and maybe I come back to something I said earlier. This is an industry that has to have a long-term view with large capital requirements for most projects, with a lot of risk on finding oil, risk on price of that oil, and so forth. So when we talk about fair play, putting profits ahead of fair play is really not, I think, the case for the general oil industry. There may be cases where that has happened, but I believe in general the behavior of the oil industry is to be quite conservative on how they approach profits and how they tell their investors about profits, because there is a lot of uncertainty in the base case to begin with.
Will the changes in corporate accounting and reporting, the makeup of corporate boards, and the practice of securities analysis mandated by Sarbanes-Oxley bring investors back into the market? And what else might be done by the industry leadership?
I think the quote that you had from Sam DiPiazza earlier really sets the foundation here. We must have more accountability, we must have more transparency, and we must have more integrity in our financial reporting. But at the same time, I think we have to look back and recognize that the stock market, there was an over-exuberance there. There was an over-evaluation. And we all got caught up in that. I mean, this wasn't some case of someone trying to dupe the public, if you will.
I think it's a good first step. Sarbanes-Oxley is a good first step. What it will take, however, is a demonstrated credibility of watching corporate America act over the next several years.
Companies are going to be looking at this with more care. Do you really create expectations that your stock price is going to go awfully high with a 20% per year increase, which is, I guess, we as investors got used to. I don't know whether the investor has to be re-educated. I think probably the hard times have re-educated himself already. So in this regard, I don't think management is really putting investors last. They're putting investors very close to the customer. But I think an education process is occurring in which the expectations are not as great as before.
Excellent point. It's been said that setting an example is the highest form of leadership. What types of things must corporate executives do to establish a new, stronger set of values? Mike?
Well, I think, as we suggested earlier, businesses have standards of conduct. We have a set of standards of conduct. It's the prerequisite of our culture. But as leaders, we have to set an expectation. We have to demonstrate. We have to walk the walk, if you will, because people look to us to set the benchmark around what has to be done.
I'd like to hear what Alan has to say about this.
Doug, I think first is being front and center. I think too often in some of the examples we've seen, some of the unfortunate examples, you have the chief executive feigning innocence or lack of knowledge. A chief executive has got to be able to face investors, face employees, clients, and talk openly and honestly and answer tough questions.
Well, doing the leadership is all about seeing live, in person, real, the values lived. And so in asking what does an executive do to do more, I would suggest look at your value statements, look at your mission statements, and live those value statements, live those mission statements. And if you do, that is the next critical step to regaining credibility within the marketplace.
What kind of consensus should energy executives be trying to build?
Well, in the Writing in World Energy, we've talked about an organization being a group of people surrounded around a purpose with a decision-making process. And that decision-making process first has to have that vision. You can't have consensus without some purpose that you're trying to achieve.
In our last broadcast, Matt Simmons pointed out that corporate leaders will play a pivotal role in restoring investor confidence. Is it possible for corporations to go beyond Sarbanes-Oxley in demonstrating integrity?
Laws are always really just setting, if you will, what's unacceptable. And smart people, in my opinion, will always go beyond that kind of minimal standard that society sets. They will set their standards clearly above that.
I agree with that. In fact, I think it's absolutely essential that we go beyond the law. After all, the criminal laws only really influence the 1.5% or so of criminals that are in prison and jail. We really have to deal with ethics and culture and go way beyond what the rules say.
Well, Sarbanes-Oxley is a vehicle to communicate. It kind of sets the standards. The other things we can obviously do is be in our industry communicating, be in our communities communicating, make sure governmental authorities know where we stand, and then be consistent in what we do and what we say, and make sure that our ethics and our standards are, in fact, our watchword.
Finally, we're now facing immense damage due to bad actions by a small fraction of American businessmen. Will we recover, and how long will it take? Steve?
Well, we'll definitely recover. I'm fully confident about that. How long it will take, however, I think is a bit longer. My view is that it may take at least a half a generation to do that.
But the other thing is culturally, how long is it going to take us to basically teach the culture so that it doesn't reoccur? And that's perhaps going to take generations.
Alan, will we recover, and how long will it take?
Oh, I think absolutely we're going to recover. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Timing, there's a lot of factors that are going to go into that. I'm not saying this tongue-in-cheek. I think there will be some recovery after the election. There is a certain element of media and political interest in making this a significant issue.
My personal view is that we're on our way out, that we are beginning to climb out of that. And I think, along those lines, a lot of the things that we've talked about today are what's causing that to happen. But the barometer for me in terms of behavior and how people are going to feel really is the stock market. And if the stock market starts coming back and continuing the growth that it's got, I think this may be somewhat short-lived.
Obviously, this is a topic that we could discuss for hours. On behalf of World Energy, I would like to thank PricewaterhouseCoopers for helping to bring the topics of energy policy, the environment, corporate governance, and now leadership to our viewers and supporters. I'm Doug Johnson for World Energy Television. Thank you for watching.